I wasn't supposed to see Vince's phone. That's the part that sticks with me, even now. We were halfway through a business dinner with Calderon Systems, trying to land a $45.7 million infrastructure upgrade deal, the kind of contract that changes a company's future, or, in my case, ruins yours. My name is John Kessler. I'm 42 years old. I live in Chicago, and for the last 10 months, my life revolved around this one project, Calderon. I'd done everything. Every line of code spec'd, every SLA clause drafted, every pitch refined. My fingerprints were on all of it. So, when Vince's phone lit up across the table, I wasn't trying to snoop. He had stepped away to take a call, left it right there next to the steak knives and linen napkins. I was moving my beer glass out of the way when I saw it. Just one line, from Gavin Rhee, the CEO. Let him wrap the contract, then cut him loose. I blinked, thought maybe I misread it. But no, those words didn't leave much room for interpretation. Let him wrap the contract, then cut him loose. The world kind of tilted sideways. I sat there, still as stone, while the waiter floated over and topped off my wine. The VP of purchasing from Calderon raised his glass and said something about a toast to John's strategic oversight. I don't even remember what I said back, just that I smiled, nodded, and felt my stomach turn cold. Vince came back all charm, sliding into his seat with that salesman's smirk he wore like a uniform. He probably thought he was subtle, but I caught the flicker in his eyes when he saw me glance down at the phone, saw the screen dark and face up. He knew I'd seen it, and for the rest of dinner, it was just a play, a performance. Everyone laughing, clinking glasses. The CTO even made some comment about how John's been the MVP of this whole engagement. I tried to laugh. Vince's jaw tightened around his wine glass. I kept thinking, how long had this been planned? Since Q3? Since Petrolin? Since I turned down that lateral move in February because Vince said, "We need you on Calderon. You're the only one who can land this." Now I knew why. I wasn't being sidelined. I was being used. They needed me to carry the deal across the finish line. And then I was gone. I made it through the dessert course without saying a word. Nodded politely as Calderon's VP stood to leave. Shook hands. Thanked them for the opportunity. Then I walked out into the Chicago night, past the valet, past the warm glow of the restaurant's windows, and just kept walking. I didn't go home. I ended up at Lake Michigan, just staring at the water like it might have answers. That was the night I realized it wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. Planned, deliberate. And Vince? He wasn't just riding shotgun. He'd been steering the whole time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, laptop open, half a bottle of Glenlivet beside me. The message kept flashing through my head like a slow explosion I couldn't stop reliving. Let him wrap the contract, then cut him loose. That was it. 10 words that made the last 10 months feel like one long, elaborate setup. And the worst part, once I saw it, I couldn't unsee the rest. Fairlight. That was 3 years ago. My boss had gone on sabbatical, one of those soul-searching breaks guys in senior leadership always got when they needed to hide from burnout. I took point on a complex cloud migration for Fairlight International. 6 weeks in, they were calling me directly. I was leading calls, drafting proposals, troubleshooting overnight outages. When the project closed, Vince got the promotion. Not even a nod in my direction. Team effort, they said in the all-hands meeting. Vince stood there with that modest smile of his, accepting congratulations for work he couldn't even spell. That should have been the first clue. Then Petrolin, the project that ate most of 2022. I led the discovery sessions, built the prototype demo from scratch, even flew to Houston twice on my own dime because procurement didn't move fast enough to approve travel. When I asked about a move up, HR said I was too valuable to shift, said they needed me where I was. Vince called it a short-term hold. That was over a year ago. 6 months back, I put together a full pitch deck for a director role, detailed metrics, testimonials from clients, even mentorship numbers. I submitted it through the official channel, scheduled time with HR, even did a mock panel with my old manager. Nothing came of it, not a no, just silence. A month later, I overheard someone from ops say leadership didn't think I was collaborative enough, too self-contained, whatever that meant, too self-contained. You know what that means in corporate speak? It means he does the work but doesn't play the game, doesn't golf, doesn't gossip, doesn't brown nose, just delivers. And apparently, that makes you expendable. My phone buzzed around midnight. It was my mom. She always seems to know when something's wrong, some invisible thread I can't explain. I let it ring twice before answering. Hi, Ma. Hey, sweetheart. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd check in. You okay? I stared at the screen for a second before answering. Yeah, just a long day. We had a client dinner. You sound tired. I'm fine, really. She didn't press. She never did. Just said she'd pray for rest and told me to eat something green tomorrow, then hung up. I closed my laptop, sat there in the dark, and that's when the email came in. Subject, confidential, Q4 org restructure. From Gabe Thomas, sent 12:14 a.m. I opened it on instinct. Gabe had access to things he wasn't technically supposed to. Calendar holds, early drafts, org planning decks. He was my assistant in title, but in practice, he was a firewall. Loyal, thou sharp, thou quiet. The PDF loaded. It was a slide deck. Syntex Strategic Org Optimization, Q4. I skimmed the first couple of pages. Mission, cost alignment, synergy. Then I hit slide 7. Leadership realignment, phase 1. There he was. Vince, promoted to executive lead, client acceleration strategy. Effective November 1st. And me, nowhere. Not a name. Not a placeholder. Not even a mention in the transition notes. Just like that. Gone. I sat back, the room suddenly colder than it had been 5 seconds earlier. They weren't just passing me over. They were phasing me out. Clean, quiet, efficient. I opened Slack. Gabe was still green. Me. How long have you had this? Gabe. 2 days. Was waiting to see if you wanted to fight or finish something. I stared at that reply for a long time. Fight or finish. I didn't reply, because the truth was, I had nothing left to lose. No promotion to chase. No more illusion of next quarter. No more loyalty to a system that had been draining me dry for 3 years while pretending I didn't exist. And somewhere in that silence, a switch flipped. I wasn't going to go down. I was going to go around. And this time, I wasn't going to ask anyone for permission. 2 months before any of this, before the message on Vince's phone, before the Q4 restructuring file, before the sleepless nights and the slow-burning realization that my career was being erased, I had lunch with Kyle Benson. At the time, I thought it was just a touch base, one of those grab lunch, talk roadmap things. CTOs do that when deals start creeping toward close. Show a little face, get a read on the room, stay visible. We picked a quiet Italian place near the Loop, the kind of spot where you get a little glass of Pellegrino, whether you ask for it or not. Kyle was already there when I arrived. Sport coat draped over the chair, phone on silent, no laptop. That should have tipped me off. He smiled when he saw me. "John," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Good to see you. You look tired." I smiled back. Comes with the territory. We ordered chicken parm for him, spinach ravioli for me, and started off with light talk. Timelines, integration risks, Calderon's cloud strategy, stuff I could recite in my sleep by that point. But halfway through, over a shared plate of breadsticks, Kyle leaned forward. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Of course." "Why are you still working under someone like Vince?" That caught me off guard. I half laughed, trying to deflect. "We share the load. He handles the executive stuff. I do the technical planning. It works." Kyle didn't blink. "Sure it does. For him." I went quiet. He let the silence sit a second before continuing. "We've been watching this deal for 10 months. Every model, every deliverable, every quarterly update. It's had your fingerprints on it, not his." I shrugged, half out of habit, half out of discomfort. "It's a team effort." He gave a small, dry laugh. "Come on, John. We've been in rooms with Vince solo. You know how many of those deals we greenlit?" I didn't answer. "0, he said. "Not one. Every proposal he sent without you, sloppy, unbalanced. No attention to risk mitigation, no client empathy, no scalable architecture. But your work? He nodded like he already knew what he was about to say was going to stay with me. Your work is clean, strategic, smart without being arrogant. That last budget reconciliation, that was art. You negotiated our CTO advisory access clause better than our own legal team. I tried to wave it off. No, he interrupted gently. Listen to me. You're the reason we stayed in this RFP cycle. We knew it was you behind the numbers. I looked down at my plate. I didn't know what to say. Kyle sat back, gave me space, then added, Look, I'm not here to recruit you. That's not what this is. I raised an eyebrow. But when you ever decide to build something of your own, you'd have our backing. No red tape, no layers of approval. We'd write the check. He said it like it was a casual thing. Like offering to fund someone's escape from a sinking ship was just normal lunchtime conversation. I made a joke, something forgettable, tried to change the subject. He didn't push, but the words stuck for weeks. I kept replaying it in my head. If you ever build something of your own, we'd back it. It had sounded impossible back then, like he was being polite, like a compliment with no expiration date. But now, with everything unraveling, the backroom restructuring, the planned exit, the fake promotions, it didn't sound so far-fetched anymore. I hadn't thought I'd need a lifeboat. Not until I realized the ship I was on was already on fire. After that lunch with Kyle, something shifted in me. It wasn't rage, it wasn't even grief, it was clarity. I'd spent a decade waiting for the next rung on a ladder that was never built for me. Now, for the first time, I saw a way out. Not a promotion, not a transfer, a clean exit. So I started small. Late at night after work, I'd crack open my laptop with a black coffee and a VPN, LLC filings, tax structure comparisons, Delaware versus Nevada incorporation. The kind of stuff that's invisible until it's suddenly everything. I use burner logins, incognito mode, personal Wi-Fi only. I was still technically Syntech's golden boy, and I wasn't about to give them a reason to peek over my shoulder. I needed help, though, someone who knew the inner gears of this company better than me. Enter Hal Ridgman. Hal had been Syntech's compliance officer up until 2 years ago, when he resigned after calling out a shady overseas procurement scheme tied to an executive's cousin. He didn't take the fall. He walked away with his dignity and a very quiet settlement. I found him consulting for a boutique risk firm in Evanston. We met at a Vietnamese spot that didn't ask questions and poured strong iced coffee. I'm not looking to make trouble, I told him after we sat down. I'm building something clean. Hal sipped his drink, then leaned forward. You want a company, he said, but you also want a shield. Exactly, he nodded. We'll do a holding structure, something plain. No logos, no LinkedIn, no trail back to you. We'll park it under a secondary LLC, different state, different registered agent. We called it R&R Developments, the blandest name we could think of. Hal filed the paperwork, looped in a tax attorney he trusted, and walked me through opening a business account at a credit union outside the city. I used my middle name on all the documents. No domain, no branding. Just bare bones infrastructure, a place to breathe. Meanwhile, I worked my day job like nothing had changed. I sent calendar invites, joined project stand-ups, even kept coaching the intern program. But every night, I was somewhere else, wireframing architecture for a company no one knew existed. Then one night, about 3 weeks in, I was in the server room backing up a handful of architecture maps I'd written for Calderon. Real technical work, not just pitch fluff. The old ventilation in that room made it feel like a tomb, cold and humming. That's when Gabe walked in. He didn't say anything at first, just leaned in the doorway with a protein bar in one hand, watching me work. You're not supposed to be in here after 10, he said. I turned. Neither are you. He smiled. True. There was a pause, then he stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and walked over to the rack beside me. I figured it out, he said softly. You're leaving. I didn't answer. He nodded to himself, like that confirmed everything he'd been wondering. Whatever this is, I'm in. I stared at him. You don't even know what I'm building. He shrugged. Don't need to. I've been watching. This company's been draining you for years. I've got eyes, man." Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a USB stick, slid it across the table. "Everything you created the past 18 months, he said. Slides, models, architecture plans, pitch decks, all scrubbed. No Syntec headers, no timestamps. Metadata clean, no logins, it's yours." I looked at him, speechless. "I figured you might need a backup before they try to make you disappear." I didn't know what to say. After years of doing it alone, of quietly swallowing every slight, every stolen idea, every not right now promotion, I wasn't alone. He clapped me on the shoulder. "No one sees what you've done here, but I do. And if you're building something new, I want in." That night, I left the server room with more than a backup. I had something else, a witness, a partner, maybe even a future. This wasn't revenge. This was rescue. I was building the exit I didn't know I'd need, and I wasn't the only one who wanted out. 2 weeks later, I sat alone in conference room D, the one with no windows, no clocks, and the worst overhead lighting in the building. Just me, a stale cup of coffee, and a laptop with the final contract open on the screen. Calderon AI Full Stack V18.pdf. I'd named every version myself, 17 before this one. This was the cleanest, the tightest, the most bulletproof architecture we'd ever pitched. If I hit send, Calderon would sign. It was ready. I had built it that way, and that's why I didn't move. I stared at the blinking cursor beside the file name for almost an hour. My finger hovered over the trackpad, ready to click send, not to Calderon, but to Vince, Gavin, and the legal team for internal routing. That was protocol. That was what they were waiting for. I leaned back and closed my eyes. They needed my signature to close the deal. That's what was holding them back. Not Vince's title, not Gavin's vision. Me, my work, my authorization. 10 months of meetings, engineering specs, pricing architecture, third-party vendor vetting. All of it funneled down to one final, approved by John Kessler. And that was the one thing they hadn't figured out how to fake. The door opened behind me. I didn't have to turn around. "Look who's burning the midnight oil," Vince said, strolling in like he owned the building. He clapped a hand on my back, then leaned over the table to peek at the screen. "That the final version?" he asked, like he didn't already know. "Yeah," I said. He pulled up a chair without asking. "God, it looks good. Kyle and the team are going to eat this up. Honestly, man, you're our closer." I didn't respond, just watched him out of the corner of my eye. He was grinning, the fake kind. The kind where the corners of his mouth moved but his eyes didn't follow. "We're going to toast this next week," he said, slapping my shoulder again. "Big things coming. You've done good work, John." Then he stood, gave me one last nod, and walked out. And just like that, it hit me. He thought I was done, that I was broken down, resigned, still playing my part. He had no idea I'd been preparing my own off-ramp. 2 minutes later, Ava stepped into the room. No knock, no hesitation. "Hey," she said softly, closing the door behind her. I looked up, surprised to see her. HR usually didn't make late-night appearances unless someone was crying in a stairwell. She walked over and stood across from me, arms crossed. "I shouldn't be saying this," she said, glancing at the door. "But I'm going to." I waited. "They're waiting on you to send the deal," she said. "That's when it goes live, and when the restructuring starts." I blinked. "You've seen the plans?" She nodded. "The whole package. Gavin's calling it a top-end pivot. The headcount reductions are already drafted. You're on the list. Vince isn't." I let that settle in. "They're going to cut me the second I send it," I said. "They're just waiting for your name to be on it," she replied. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then I closed the laptop. Ava nodded slowly, as if she knew I wouldn't need convincing. She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth," she said, "you're better than the people running this place." And then she walked out. I sat there for a few more minutes, staring at the closed laptop. They thought I was stuck, but I wasn't. For the first time in a long time, I had leverage, not in theory, not in some vague promise of visibility or future opportunity. No, real leverage. I had the work, the contacts, the trust of the client. And more importantly, I had something they couldn't see yet, a way out. They wanted the deal. They needed my signature. But now Now I had their clients, and they didn't even know it yet. I walked into the office Monday morning like it was any other day. Same coffee in hand, same button-down shirt. I kept just slightly wrinkled to avoid looking like I was trying too hard. Gabe nodded at me from across the bullpen. No smile, just that barely there look we'd mastered over the years. The kind that said, "Watch your six," without needing words. I swiped my badge at the glass doors. Nothing. The light blinked red, tried again. Still red. A security guard I didn't recognize approached me with polite but blank eyes. "Mr. Kessler?" he said, already reaching for a folder under his arm. "Yeah. I'm going to need your badge, please." He handed me a slim envelope, 5 sheets of paper, neatly stapled. Syntec, letterhead. Termination? Notice UDO effective immediately. No cause listed. No exit interview. No bullet points. Just 5 lines of legal nothingness. Like I'd never worked there. Like I hadn't just carried them through a 10-month, multi-million-dollar contract. I didn't say a word, just nodded, handed him my badge, and walked toward my desk like I needed to grab something. He followed, of course. They always do. Company protocol says no one walks alone, post-termination. Except when I got there, my name was already gone from the desk tag. Gabe was standing nearby, arms crossed, eyes locked on me. He didn't flinch, just gave me the faintest tilt of the head. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, looked back at me, and mouthed, "They cut you." I gave him a nod, like we'd expected this. Because we had. Sarah, junior analyst, 2 cubes over, looked up from her monitor and frowned. "They just reassigned your projects to Vince," she said under her breath. "It's like your name was never on anything." On my chair, someone had left a manila envelope. No name, no note. I opened it slowly. Inside was a USB drive, the same one Gabe had scrubbed and prepped weeks ago. Every model, every pitch, every architecture document I'd built, all clean, all ready. I didn't ask how he got it back on my chair. He just gave me a look that said, "I never stopped watching your back." I slid it into my pocket. Then I turned and walked out. No scene. No outburst, no final words. I didn't need them. They thought they'd erased me. Like I was just a name in a directory that could be toggled off with a switch. They thought the moment I stepped outside, I'd vanish, fade, disappear. But what they didn't know was that I was already gone. The man they fired, that wasn't me anymore. I wasn't John Kessler, a senior solutions architect at Syntec. I was John Kessler, CEO of R&R Developments. And in 6 days, the biggest deal in Syntec history would go public, without their name on it. At 7:03 a.m., the next morning, I sat at my kitchen table in the quiet of my apartment. Sunlight hadn't even broken through the blinds yet. The city was still asleep. My phone was on silent. The only sound was the soft whir of the ceiling fan above me, and the slow exhale I didn't realize I'd been holding. I opened my laptop, pulled up the final version of the Calderon contract, the real one, the one I'd written, the one I'd built from scratch, version after version, word by word. It was still named Calderon JCI Full Stack V18.pdf, the name Vince expected, the one Gavin would have recognized. I clicked on the file name. Rename R&R Calderon Final.pdf. That one small change felt bigger than any promotion I'd ever been denied. Then I opened the signature block. Deleted. Syntec Solutions, Senior Solutions. Architect, John Kessler. Typed in, R&R Developments, CEO, John Kessler. I stared at the screen for a second. Not for doubt, I just wanted to remember how it felt. That precise moment where everything I thought I'd been building for someone else finally became mine. I attached the file to a blank email. To Kyle Benson, subject, final contract. The body was just one sentence. Thank you for waiting. Ready to move. Hit send. 4 minutes later, my laptop pinged. From Kyle Benson. Subject, RE, final contract. We're in, funding available, let's announce Friday. Congratulations, John. Kyle. That was it. No lawyers, no red tape, no VP approval chain, just action. I leaned back in my chair, hands still hovering above the keyboard. I didn't feel euphoric. I felt still, solid, like someone had finally let me come up for air after years underwater. For a decade, I'd been chasing titles, competing for slots on an org chart built for people who looked the part, talked the talk, and knew how to make themselves visible at the right happy hours. I thought I needed that ladder. Turns out, I just needed a pen. One signature. That's all it took to change everything. Not a plea, not a pitch, not a 30-slide deck, just a name. My name, on the deal. The irony. Syntec fired me, thinking they were cutting dead weight. Thought they were protecting their asset by containing the risk. I could almost hear Gavin saying it in his boardroom voice. But they never understood the truth. I wasn't the risk. I was the value. And now, Calderon wasn't their client anymore. They were mine. At exactly 8:12 a.m. that Friday, my phone lit up with a news alert. Tech Insider exclusive. Calderon inks major AI deal with emerging firm R&R Developments. That was the headline. No mention of Syntec. Not a single word. I sat on my couch in sweatpants, barefoot, holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. My inbox was exploding. Old colleagues, vendors, 2 journalists, even a VC I hadn't spoken to since 2016. Everyone suddenly remembered my name, and then came the texts. The first was from Vince. "Call me, we need to talk." That's then again 5 minutes later. "John, seriously, we need to get ahead of this." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the article to Gabe with 0 commentary. He replied within 60 seconds. Vince just broke his coffee mug in the break room. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Not the polite, tight-lipped kind I gave during fake happy hours or forced conference calls. A real body-shaking laugh. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for too many years. Syntec had been hit straight in the chest. Their golden deal, the one they'd been dangling in investor meetings and internal forecasts, was now flying someone else's flag. Mine. By noon, I'd heard from Ava. She didn't say much, just sent a screenshot of an internal Slack message from Gavin to the exec team. Find out who R&R Developments is. Yesterday. Too late. By then, Kyle had publicly tagged me in the Calderon press release on LinkedIn, proud to partner with R&R Developments and its visionary founder, John Kessler. Innovation deserves recognition. More to come. Over 1,000 likes. Comments from tech execs, former clients, even competitors. Half of them pretending they had always known I was one to watch. Funny how quickly people switch sides when the logo changes. By 3 p.m., someone from Syntec's PR team sent me a message asking for clarification regarding R&R's affiliation with former Syntec personnel. I ignored it. Then Gabe sent another update. Their legal team's in full panic mode. Half the conference rooms are booked out all day. Vince hasn't come out of his office. Good. This wasn't spite. This was acknowledgement. For years, I'd built the foundations that made Syntec's biggest accounts possible. I'd been the face clients trusted, the voice on the calls, the author of every blueprint Vince claimed credit for. And now, they had nothing to show for it but silence in their inbox and confusion in their boardroom. Syntec didn't even know how to respond. Because they didn't have a story. I was the story. And now I had the headline. The company that refused to put my name on anything was choking on it. 2 days after the story broke, a thick white envelope landed on my apartment doorstep. No signature required, just dropped off like a pizza flyer. I opened it slowly. Inside, 4 neatly folded pages, watermarked with the Syntec legal seal. The header read, "Notice of intent to pursue legal action, client interference and intellectual property." Misappropriation. I actually laughed out loud, not a full laugh, more like a scoff, the kind you give when someone who used to ignore you suddenly wants to talk terms. I took a picture of the whole thing and texted it to Hal. 2 minutes later, he called, no hello, just, "Amateurs." I put him on speaker as I poured a fresh cup of coffee. "They have no IP claim," he said, flipping through the scanned pages I'd sent. "You were a contractor. They never moved you to full-time status. No employment contract, no NDA, and, Hang on, I'm looking now. Yep. No assignment of IP clause. It's like they set the whole thing up to protect them from liability, and forgot it also protects you. They always said keeping me as a contractor gave them flexibility, I muttered. Hal snorted. It gave you freedom. They just didn't know it. He paused for a beat. Then, in that calm, surgical voice of his, said, I'll handle this. The next day, Hal sent me a copy of his response. 2 pages. Cold. Perfect. Not a wasted word. To whom it may concern, your claim lacks merit. Mr. Kessler was not an employee. No intellectual property agreements were signed, no proprietary tools were used, and all development originated from external, non-exclusive assets. For your records, we've attached his 1099s confirming contractor status. No W-2s were ever issued. Unless a formal substantiated claim is filed in court within 10 business days, we consider this matter closed. Additionally, we've blind copied the Syntec Ethics and Risk Oversight Committee as a professional courtesy. Regards, Hal Ridgman, Esker R&R Development's legal counsel. I forwarded it to Gabe. He replied with one line. They messed with the wrong guy, and they had. They built a system where people like me were easier to overlook, to underpay, to shut out of boardrooms, all so they could keep options open and expenses down. Turns out, their shortcut became my shield. They thought I was disposable. But now I was untouchable.